this is a very special guest we have, as was last year. It's kind of unique to meet the elite that this country has produced. And he's a humble man, no more than Padraig was last year. His record in sport is quite extraordinary. You all know him, of course. He's loved by Irish sports fans for various reasons, not just his success, I think. I think it's as a leader that is the main reason we love him. There's so many qualities to him. He would say he didn't lead Munster to great success, but he did, and Ireland. He got a record number of caps for an Irish forward, captained the Lions. He's had an extraordinary career, extraordinary success. He's now started a new life in France, like some of you are starting new lives in your careers. We'll give a warm welcome to our scholarship special guest tonight, Paul O'Connell, ladies and gentlemen.
It's fairly emotional. I must say, I think it's emotional every time, to be quite honest, because it was great honour really for the family and for Sheila, myself, and Marcus and Justin as well, you know. He was unbelievably competitive. You'd never see him beaten at the wall, you know. I would always expect him to win. He was so competitive.
His will to win and his dedication stood out. After one competition, I said to him, you and I are going to the Olympics.
6 to 8 in the morning before school on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, 6 to 7 every evening after school, 9 to 11 Saturday morning and 8 to 10 Sunday morning.
The hours of training, the dedication, the discipline. Swimming was a great character builder for him.
He started stacking shelves, but he graduated very quickly from that. Any sporting person that came into the shop, I used to say, do you see that big red-haired young fella down there? He'll play for Ireland. He didn't like the deli, and the hands were so big. Trying to get him around sandwiches and things like that would have been too difficult. He took one look at it and he said, no, John, I don't think that's for me.
He was a tall, skinny young fella, do you know what I mean? I never thought he was going to turn out the player he would be.
I was always competitive and wanted to win, so I then started playing under 10s and under 12s with young Munsters.
Always meant for training, always wanted to get it right, always practicing, show me that again, I want to get it right.
I was an out half back then as well. Yeah.
The big thing for Paul is standards, and a Monday is as important as a Saturday.
I said, you had a great game there today. He says, I missed 2 tackles, or, you know, that's the way he is.
When you're in that situation where the pain is coming on, in the back of your head, you're saying to yourself, I'm getting better here. You know, this is horrible, but I'm getting better. When you're on the pitch, you know, when you do go to that place, you know, where your lungs are struggling, where your legs are struggling, you know you've done the work, you know you've put it in, you know you can work through it.
He's very, very special in terms of the ability to deliver the right message at the right time.
He's our captain, he's an outstanding leader, and when he speaks to the squad during the week, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. I don't know if he knows how important that he is and his words are.
At times it's been extremely heated, and at times it's been, you can see steam coming out of his big red head. But Paul is very intelligent, so with a lot of forwards you can kind of give him a simple answer and put them on the wrong track. But Paul understands the game, so I can't fool him.
He's an example, any young fella today, you know. I have a grandchild at the moment, he's only 4. Who do you want to be? Paul O'Connell.
I've played my whole career with him, and I've seen what one person can bring to an organisation, because he wants to get things right, and that's the most important thing. It's team first, Paul second.
It has been an unbelievable adventure. Playing for your country is, you know, it's nearly the pinnacle, really. I think if you can make the 100, it's a great milestone in your career, you know.
Well, there's a couple of things strikes. First of all, you're coaching in France now.
Yeah.
It's a big, massive change for you. How's that going?
Yeah. Well, I have Paris, Limerick to Paris is a big change, as you can imagine.
Yeah. A drop in standards. Yeah.
A big drop in standards. It's great. It's very different. It's very different to what I was used to in Munster. I think Munster has a, I suppose, almost a GAA club ethos, but we're professionals. And rugby in France is very much, you know, it's a bit of a business. It's a bit of a professional game. So I suppose we're trying to, well, I'm trying to reverse that a little bit and try and just create an environment here where guys, we'll do everything we can to help them play for France, because ultimately that's a lot of their goals. But it has been difficult. It's a big change from Munster, but the family are really enjoying it. I have kids. Both my kids are in French schools. They're not in international schools. They're in fully French-speaking schools. Their teachers don't speak a word of English. I had a parent-teacher meeting. I genuinely had a parent-teacher meeting the other day, and they hadn't a clue what I was saying, and I hadn't a clue what they were saying. But I think Paddy's doing all right in school.
Great, that's fantastic, yeah.
But it's been a great experience.
And he's happy with it, is he?
Yeah, he's really happy. He's really, really happy. He plays for Stade Francais, which is the kind of junior club of the club I coach for, and so they scoot to school. No one really drives there because of the traffic. They take off on scooters to school, and it's all about the metro, the tram, the bus, everywhere. So we're having a great time. Rugby club could be doing better, but I'm learning and I'm figuring out if this is what I want to do or not.
And one last question on it. So you're dealing with the forwards. So what about language and?
Yeah, I speak French with an English with a Limerick accent. With a Limerick accent.
Bonjour.
So I have a translator who. I would say I do about 50% of my coaching in French, and I'd say, and then for the other 50% he translates. But I would say about 25% of my French he also translates as well.
And when you were coming up to Irish camp from Limerick, did you have a translator as well? No, sorry, it's cheap. It was. Can I just tell you one thing he told me once? Before Paul went, I said to him one day, I said, "What about learning French?" He said, "Well, Johnny Sexton sent me some tapes." I said, "Oh, that was very good of him." He said, "Well, not really. They're all whingy comments on it." The out-halves. Ron O'Gara made the same remark there. You and Rog had a very close relationship, didn't you?
Yeah.
But the out-halves and the forwards normally don't have a great relationship.
Well, they tell us what to do, and Johnny has a reputation, particularly in France. He had a big reputation for being cranky and complaining. And one of the biggest things we have in Ireland, leadership plays a massive role in success in Irish sports. Players that are willing to, I suppose, hold each other to a higher standard is really prevalent in Irish sports. You look at the Dublin footballers, you look at the Kilkenny hurlers, you look at the Limerick hurlers this year, the Munster teams down through the years that were successful, Leinster, Irish rugby, but it's not part of the French culture. They don't really hold each other. If someone does something wrong in Ireland, a player will pull you up on it. And Johnny Sexton is incredible for pulling people up. You can't put a foot in the wrong position without Johnny telling you. And I think in his 2 years in France, it's one of the reasons he struggled. But it's probably the difference between our two cultures that he's absolutely adored over here because of the leadership he brings to the team. And in France, he really struggled because of doing the exact same thing.
What I'm going to do is just, if I may, show you a few photographs from through your career. And it's a snapshot of your career, perhaps. I'll step back so you can all see it there, lads. So the first photograph I'm going to show you goes way back. It's grainy, black and white. Yeah. Tell us about this photograph.
You see, you're trying to make me look older than I am now. I have that photo at home in colour. But it was in my book in black and white. But this is my favourite photo from my rugby career because this is Blackrock College in Dublin, and it would have been an Irish schools trial. Back then they used to do the possibles versus the probables. So the probables are probably going to get picked. The possibles might possibly get picked. These guys are the probables, we're the possibles. This is a guy called Emerson from Ulster, from the north of Ireland. You've never heard of him. And I'm about to tell you why. Because if you look here, this is a guy called Nicky O'Connor from Clongowes. And lifting had just come in the line out at the time. And Nicky O'Connor from Clongowes and Rob McGrath, who you can't see behind me, they used to lift from the legs, which you can see right here. They used to lift from the knees. This is Jerry Cleary. He lifted from the shorts, which was bad for Emerson. And in this game, I wouldn't have played particularly well in this game, but I stole 3 lineouts off this guy for the obvious fact that I was 4 foot above him when we got off the ground. I mean, his shorts were probably too big for him as well. So even if the lads had him at full extension, he was probably still only about 2 foot off the ground. But that photo's in my book, and I got picked for Irish schools on the back of that game, on the back of stealing 4 lineouts in that game. And once you get picked for Ireland schools, your name is in the hat for Munster under-20s the following year. And if you do okay with Munster under-20s, your name is in the hat for Irish under-20s. And if you play for Irish under-20s, your name is in the hat for the academy. And you're kind of in a progression that it's almost harder to get off it than it is to get on it. And what happens then is when you get into Munster under-20s, you start meeting players like Donncha O'Callaghan, unbelievable professional, brilliant player who you kind of have to try and, I suppose, become better than or emulate. You end up training with Jerry Flannery, who unbelievably hard trainer who you have to try and emulate and come better than. So that little break from me,
Nicky, is it?
Nicky O'Connor from Clongowes, I still meet him the odd time in Dublin, and he always says I owe him money for what he did for me. But and that's my favourite photo from my career because it gave me the big break. And I was dedicated. I was a good, hard trainer. Once I came across coaches, and once I came across good players that I could learn from, I was able to take advantage of it. Yeah. But that was a real big break for me. So I'm delighted you showed that photo.
Okay, well, I've got a couple more, not just on the pitch. We beat the All Blacks recently at home. You saw the match, obviously.
Yeah, I was at the game. Yeah. Yep. I know where you're getting at.
This one, yeah. This is from Chicago. You remember we beat one in Chicago?
Well, look, that's an it's funny, I played New Zealand 9 times, and I lost 9 times in a row. So my record is 9-0. And loads of people. That was after the game in Chicago, and loads of people said to me, they said, were you disappointed that you weren't involved in the last game? And I always say I got 9 shots at them and I didn't win, so I don't deserve it. But we've a saying in Munster, we've the most amazing supporters in the world in Munster, right? But we used to go away to games in France, like Roger Downer was in Cast at the weekend for the Munster Cast game. And in fairness to the Munster supporters, they're incredible supporters, but they really know how to enjoy themselves as well. So when they go to France, they get on the wine, and you be in the airport after the game, coming home, and the guys to avoid because their teeth are black from red wine, their lips are black from red wine, and we used to call them potholes because what do you do when you come to a pothole? You avoid it, and it's hard to believe, but Dougie was at that game with me, and Dougie Howlett, who's a New Zealander that played with Munster, and all the players were doing a lap of honour in Chicago, and I never thought I would be the kind of person that was hanging over the railings as a supporter, shouting at the players, trying to catch their attention, so that they'd say hello to me. Now, I'd had a few beers at that stage, but that to me is, me and Dougie call it our journey from player to pothole supporter. That's what we call that photo. But it was a great day, a fantastic experience.
It's a great photograph. But Dougie, being a Kiwi, his smile is equally...
Well, do you know why Dougie's smile is like that? At that moment, there's 5 Munster players hugging each other, giving us a wave after beating. And there's guys like Simon Zebo, who Dougie would have mentored and helped along the way. Guys like Donncha Ryan, who I would have helped along the way. So it's actually a really nice moment. Yeah. It's kind of embarrassing for us, but it was a lovely moment. Yeah.
There's kind of an alumni in rugby then as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there certainly is. There certainly is, and it's actually getting stronger than ever because there's a bit of a thing starting in rugby among professional players that we all have to look after each other, because retirement from professional rugby, I'm finding out more than ever, it's not easy, Yeah. And you need to look after each other. You need to look out for each other, and there's a lot of that going on now.
That's becoming apparent across sport, that elite sports people at the top, where you're in the buzz, the bubble, and you leave it, and the world carries on, and it's very
Yeah, well, you've an incredible purpose when you play. You've this amazing. I mean, I know Padraig Harrington is here, and he's lucky as a golfer. You know, he doesn't have to retire at 35. He can keep going. But you've just this amazing sense of purpose when you're playing. You know, you're out in a restaurant for a meal with your friends, and you're trying to eat the right things. You know, everyone else is planning to stay out. You're actually trying to plan, how can I get home, because I should be in bed an hour ago. You're getting up in the morning. You're trying to eat exactly the right food. You're trying to start hydrating. You've an amazing sense of purpose when you're playing, and when you retire, you lose all that, and that's probably the main thing I miss. I don't miss playing. I don't miss being on the field. But I do miss the sense of purpose I had when I was playing.
The next photograph refers to possibly what you were all encompassing as well. It's a different one. This now is the 9-0, isn't it?
Well, as I said, my record against New Zealand is 9-0, and this was probably my only real chance of beating New Zealand. It was 2013, and we were 19-0 up, and we ended up losing by 2 points. But at this point, we've just conceded the try, which is about to give them a draw. But that's not the annoying thing about this photo. When we played with Ireland, we had a thing called no tells. So you weren't allowed ever show to the opposition, to your fellow players, or to the referee that you were tired. So you weren't allowed to put your hands on your head. You weren't allowed to put your hands on your knees and bend over like this, and you weren't allowed to lie on your knees on the floor, right? So this photo on the Monday after we've blown a 19-0 lead against New Zealand, this photo appeared on the cover of the Irish Times. And to say Joe Schmidt was more pissed off about this photo than he was about the result on the night. And
I thought there were 5 of you, Paul, but there's another fella here with his hands on it. Yeah.
He's lucky. His face isn't in it. But that photo was put up. That photo was put up in one of our meetings, you know, and it was we said we were a no tells team. What do we look like here? And but yeah, it just reminds me of that game. Unfortunately, we didn't get the job done. We should have gotten the job done, but I've been delighted to see the guys go on and do it twice since I've retired.
That's Rob Kearney on the hands and knees there.
Yeah.
Jamie.
Yeah. However bad I look, now, in fairness, he's far worse than me.
Now, all of us in college, new job, there's a boss or there's somebody you have to answer to. And I have a photograph here I'd like you to talk about. I'm trying to work out, are you ready to kill him, ready to smile, ready to what? That's Nigel Owens, probably the world's most famous referee, is he?
Yeah. He's a brilliant referee. He's a comedian as well. But he's a very good guy. But it's probably one of the best things in rugby is about how much players respect referees. But the reason that's an interesting photo is one of the things. We're very lucky in rugby that we've a sports psychologist with us all the time, you know, and it's not a case that you go and you sit back on the couch beside him and you spill out all your problems. You know, he travels to games with us. He comes to our meals. He'd be at training. So you end up walking to the bus with him, or you end up sitting beside him on the bus, and you end up shooting the breeze with him about various things. Well, one of the things he encouraged me to do was. He used to talk about closing the loop. So if you want to change a habit, you need to close the loop. You need to make a plan of how you're going to get better. You need to try and execute that plan. And then you need to review that plan and see if it works. And then you need to, keep going along that loop all the time. Whereas I was deadly for working really hard at something. And if it worked, great. And if it didn't work, I'd just work way hard at it. I wouldn't actually review it and close the loop. But one of the things I did with referees was, we're lucky with Sky Sports, you can get a match.
And RTE.
And RTE, sorry, Des. You can get. You don't cover any rugby anymore, Des, but you can get.
We can't afford you.
You can get the ref mic, so I can listen to the ref mic of all my interactions with the referee during a game, right? So So I listened to 10 games in a row. And if you look here, while I'm talking to him, I still have my gum shield in there. That's because I lost my 2 front teeth while I was playing. And whenever I wanted to speak to the referee, I didn't want to take out my gum shield and be on Sky Sports missing my 2 front teeth. So I used to speak to him with my gum shield in. I was a second row forward, so I was generally knackered, tired while I was talking to him. I could barely breathe. I'm speaking in a Limerick accent. He's Welsh or he's French or whatever he may happen to be. And I realised, there was no way he could actually understand what I was saying half the time, and generally I was making the point really aggressively. And I watched 10 different games.
So where did you do that, at home or in Munster?
I just got our video analyst to get the footage for me, and I watched about 10 different games. I realised, there's a great saying, if you want people to understand you, you need to try and understand them. So here's a guy under pressure. He's in Thomond Park refereeing a game. Every decision against Munster he's getting abused for. And then I'm coming up to him, speaking to him in a gum shield in a Limerick accent. I can barely breathe. How could I ever build a relationship with him? So I actually changed. I decided to speak to a referee 3-4 times max in a game. I decided to be fully recovered, as close to as fully recovered as possible by the time I spoke to him. And then I decided to try and just say it in one sentence. Whatever I had to say it in one sentence and be gone. And towards the end of my career, I had an unbelievable relationship with the referees. But, it was very, very difficult at the start. But if I hadn't have done that bit of self-reflection, or if I hadn't have had Enda McNulty with the Irish team to say to me, listen, you should have a look at what you're doing and actually write down what you could do differently, it wouldn't have helped me,
That's an extraordinary story. So you have, obviously, the discipline that we all face in our workplace or on our team. Then you have maybe unsung heroes, and I'm sure there are lots, both on the pitch and off the pitch, no more than in an office or work environment. This is a guy who I've often heard Irish players talk about. Will you tell us a little bit about Rala?
Yeah, that's Rala, Paddy O'Reilly, the bagman. He's probably, I couldn't be sure how much he was paid, but I'd imagine he's one of the lowest paid we've players been very highly paid. But he's probably one of the most important guys in our whole squad. Everyone used to go to his room on a Friday night before the game. He used to get we used to stay in the Shelburne the night before the home games. He used to get all his room covered in plastic, all the carpet covered in plastic. And everyone used to bring their dress shoes, which is their shoes to do the night after. Yeah. And everyone used to bring their boots up to his room. And you polish your boots and you polish your shoes up there. And he always had what we call
24 or whatever.
24 of us in the room watching the Late. He'd be making tea. And he always had contraband. Our nutritionist obviously didn't allow sweets or chocolate, but he'd always have sweets or chocolate hidden somewhere. So you could have, everyone wouldn't be in there at one time, but you could have 15, 16 guys in his room, all polishing their boots, changing their studs, all chatting, making tea for each other and hanging out. And we used to do, in fairness, the poor guy, some of the stories. We used to do things like I remember David Wallace. Poor David Wallace. He had an ankle injury, and to retain muscle mass on his legs, he got those things you see him advertised on the internet. You put them on your people that want to get a six pack. They put them on their belly.
Oh, yeah, I have one.
You have one. Ronaldo sells them. I think you put them on their belly and they crunch and they give you a six pack. But David Wallace got one of these and he had to put it on his quad to maintain muscle mass on his legs. But the lads decided to hold Rala down and see how many volts he could take on his face. And eventually the doctor came in and absolutely lost the plot with the team. They was like, this guy's 63 years of age. But they used to wrap him up. They used to tie him up in a duvet. They used to put sellotape around him. They used to put him on a chair. The trolleys that your luggage gets brought up to your room in the hotel. They'd wheel that into the lift. And the day of a big Irish international, there could be, 400 or 500 people in the foyer of the Shelburne. They'd send the lift down to reception and they'd just leave him in the middle of the foyer. But he was a great guy. But one story, we lost the game one day to Australia. And we were badly beaten, and I remember it was Joe Schmidt's second game in charge, and we were playing New Zealand the following week, and And Rala, I was captain, and I met Rala on the corridor, and he had a little card. He had an envelope with a card in it in his hand. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Oh, I'm just going down to reception here." And I said, "Okay, sure, I'll pop up to you later on for a cup of tea or whatever." And he went down to reception. But straight away, the concierge came up to my room and delivered the same card to me. And I opened the card. We were playing New Zealand the following day, and the card said, "Paul, on the morrow, unleash the dogs of war, Rala." And it was a lovely card. And I went up to him and I said, "Rala, I met you on the corridor. You could have just given me the card yourself." And he said, "I thought it would have better effect if the concierge delivered it to you." And it's like, and like, he just, you meet people in all sorts of businesses from the top to the bottom. Yeah. He always felt he had a role to play to make the place more fun, more enjoyable, and he was just an incredible guy. And he even, he just texted me this morning, "Happy Christmas," and I'd say he's going through his phone with every single player he's had under his time, wishing them happy Christmas. He's a special guy,
Just in case some of you are thinking, I'm getting very good tips from Paul here, inviting the others in your office to come in and polish their shoes with you would be an odd one, but the rest of it is all. But Rala's clearly a very special man. Workplaces and venues, you had huge victories and drama and excitement across the world. This photograph I want to ask you about. This is Croke Park, ladies and gentlemen, because as you know, the historic games in Croke Park in 2007 and Ireland. This is the Ireland-England game. Have you your memories of this? There's one image.
Yeah, that's actually during the national anthems, and we had lost the previous week. The first game in Croke Park was actually against France, and Brian O'Driscoll was injured, and I was captain, and we lost, and we should have won.
Narrowly, last minute.
Yeah, last minute, and we should have won, and so we probably piled a whole lot of pressure on ourselves by the time this game came around. We'd made it into a no-lose game under any circumstances, and that's during the anthems. I'll never forget the Irish national anthem that day. It was something very, very special, which I'll remember forever. I loved actually strings used to come between me and Dunners during the anthems as well, which was absolutely ridiculous. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe he was a professional rugby player.
He's a dancer now.
But he's a dancer now. Yeah, he's taking your job. But yeah, that was an amazing day, and we won. We beat them well. They didn't really have a Will Carling or a Martin Johnson or a real guy that was going to stand up to us on the day. They kind of rolled over, and it suited us fine.
But did the atmosphere? Because I know that once players are involved in the match, they're focused on the match rather than atmosphere. But the build-up with the history of Croke Park, etc., and the atmosphere during the national anthems, you could cut. That was, people say you can cut the tension with a knife. That was one of those days, I thought.
Yeah, it was. But they brought in Conor O'Shea that week to explain to them the Irish history of the game, and the history of the game. Even though they had to be respectful, it had nothing to do with those English players. Sure, yeah. I just think they were so eager to be respectful of the occasion that they actually brought it onto the pitch as well for the 90 minutes of the game, which suited us fine. But it was an incredible occasion, and a lot of us have been playing together a long time at that stage, so to have experienced it together was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, to move on that, the history of Ireland and understanding the Irish psyche, I've a photograph here of you and a man who clearly has a huge understanding of the Irish psyche, and you two clearly had a close relationship, Joe Schmidt and yourself.
Yeah. Look, he's the best coach I ever had by a long way. I mean, he's the best coach I ever had. He's the best sports psychologist I ever had.
In best coach, is it tactically he was the best coach?
Tactically he's brilliant. And look, I'm doing a bit of coaching myself at the moment. I work in Stade Francais in Paris at the moment, but he was a teacher for a long time. He was an English teacher. And I think that's probably his biggest strength. Rugby or coaching is about being able to change people's habits. And a lot of us, obviously I've no hair in that photo. I'm quite old. I think I'm about 35 in that photo. It's hard to change habits when you've been doing something a certain way for a long time. So you need a really good teacher if you're going to be able to change habits at that stage. And he was a phenomenal teacher, a brilliant sports psychologist as well. Then preparation-wise, I played some of the best rugby in my career at 35 years of age. I was only, because of my injuries, I could only train about half as much as I used to be able to train. But it's because I was able to prepare so well. So he's had a massive effect on Irish rugby and a massive effect on a lot of the Irish players.
Everybody loves him in all the interviews because he's such a warm man. But I hear from players he's a tough man.
Yeah, he is tough. He's tough when he needs to be. But he's a great guy, and he has great empathy, and he likes people. He wants the players to do well. He wants the players to be at their best. But he's tough. You have to be tough at times, and he was never unreasonably tough, I think, with anyone, with me or with anyone. It's funny, one story actually, he put a camera, we were training in Connacht in the sports grounds in Galway, and we were doing these runs, and he put a camera on the line, so you had to hit a line and turn and come back, so we had to do this about 10 times. But no one realised he actually put a camera pointing right on the line. So
someone stopped
so he
short.
could see everyone's feet that stopped short. And I would say I stopped short, maybe we did it 20 times. I stopped short about 5 times. And he said, and he showed it on the video, and he said, if our skipper is doing this, what hope do we have? And I wanted the ground to swallow me up. But it just showed to all the younger players that no one is safe. If your standards are not here, it doesn't matter whether you are a 100 capper or a 5 capper, I'm going to be all over you.
Good. Last 2 photographs, ladies and gentlemen. The first one, you talk about determination required and steeliness. That photograph,
very attractive photograph of me.
It's a key photograph in your career. It's your first cap.
Yeah, well, that's my first cap, and it's funny, I suppose that as a Munster man, you'd love to see Munster winning every year, but one of the reasons they probably don't win every year at the moment is because of this. There's a Munster, like Munster, and I think there's 2 other Munster guys out of shot. So 1 to 10 of that team that day were all Munster players starting on the Irish team, whereas it's the other way around now at Leinster. But it's funny, I know there's so much talk about concussion in rugby. I had 2 concussions in my whole career, and that was one of them. And I don't remember. That's why I look like such an idiot, obviously. But
you scored a try in your first.
I scored a try, and I have no recollection of it. But I started coming around. About 20 minutes after it, and we were in a line out, and I walked off the pitch to the doctor, and I said something's not right. And I was lucky. I had a little bit of blood in my head, and the docs took me off as a blood injury. And he started asking me. Back then there was no HIA, which is
head injury assessment.
Head injury assessment. Yeah. They just ask you your phone number and who you're playing and all this. And I was able to answer all the questions, but the clock was actually counting down in Lansdowne Road. And by the time I looked at the clock, there was 2.5 minutes left of the first half. And Mick Griffin, who's a Limerick man, was the doctor. And I said, Mick, I am not going off after 2.5 minutes of my first cap. And he said, you're definitely going off. He said, there's 2.5 minutes left of the first half. He said, and that was it. It was game over. But yeah, that's a. Well, even though I don't remember it, it's a great moment and a great memory.
Because this is mean to say to one of our greatest players, he wasn't the most prolific try scorer. 06, he scored in 06, and his next try was in 2015, 9-year gap. But that wasn't your job, in fairness.
Yeah, but I was the equivalent of a fullback. I wasn't supposed to be. I wasn't playing up front.
I know that. And the end of your international career, a photograph from this. Now you can see fellas applauding in the background. You've given so much, but it was a horrific injury, actually.
It was a bad injury. That was my last ever game, and it's a funny story behind that. I was never stretchered off in my career, and when I was lying on the ground, I actually said it to myself. I knew my leg was gone, and I said, I've never been stretchered off. I'm gonna I'm going to try and walk off here. So I said to the doc, help me up there. And the doc and the physio, the doc and the masseur, Dave Revens, helped me up. And it was too sore. I said, put me back down and get the stretcher immediately. But as we were going off, I don't know if you ever noticed when players get stretchered off in games, they do this kind of thumbs up thing to the crowd, like, you know. And I used to always look at people that did that, and I used to be like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, you know, I used to think, why are they doing that? Like, who do they think they are, you know? But apparently it's to let your family know that you're okay and it's not the end of the world. But that's Éanna Falvey there. This bald guy here is the Éanna Falvey. He's a former Irish heavyweight boxing champion, actually. He's our doctor. But the reason you raise your hand up to give a thumbs up is to let your family know at home. Like Emily wasn't at the game, Paddy, my son, wasn't at the game. It's just to let you know, let them know that you're okay. So Éanna said to me, he said, Paul, now when the camera comes on to you, I need you to just, you've torn your hamstring, like it's not the end of the world. He said, I need you to just raise your hand and give the thumbs up. I said, I'm not fucking doing that. So he ended up in a massive argument. He said, like, I could barely breathe 2 minutes ago, and then I was abusing him. But he said to me, he said, look, Paul, he said, you have to do it. Emily's at home, Paddy's at home, you have to do it. So the camera came up when he said, once the camera comes on, you do it. So I did it. And then, you know, the thing was going off really slowly, and he said, it's going to come back on you now again in a second. I need you to. And we ended up in a shouting match. Like, I mean, these guys, I was talking to them afterwards in the dressing room. They were laughing their heads off that I was being stretchered off, but the two of us were having a massive row about whether to wave at the crowd or not. So, and that was my last game. And it's funny, the guy that actually cleaned me out in the ruck where the injury happened works in Stade Francais. I meet him every day and work with him in Stade Francais now. His name is Pascal Pape. Yeah, so.
Did you discuss it?
We've never mentioned it, would you believe?
That's a bit like me and Padraig Harrington and the letter. Yeah, that's awkward. If I may, this is the last thing. Paul's book, still available in all good bookshops. Paul O'Connell, The Battle. You might play it again, Des, when you're there as well. In the last chapter, because you see, you had success, or you had successful stuff to reflect on, you know, which makes your last chapter a lot stronger than the other one. But there's one very interesting thing. I can read it if you like. You quote John Wooden, an American basketball coach. And you say there was a line that resonated with me then, and you got a pen and you underlined it. And the quote's very simple. It's a one-liner. Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing you made the effort to become the best of which you're capable. And you said that it took years for that to sink into your head.
Yeah.
What was success to you? I mean, everyone here is starting out in their careers.
Well, look, I love that quote because in the early years of my career, if we didn't win the European Cup with Munster, I mean, I'd spend the summer miserable. I mean, I was a nightmare to be around. The whole satisfaction of rugby for me revolved around winning the European Cup with Munster, and it was, you know, whether the year was a success or not was based on whether we had the trophy. And I know it's maybe easy to look back now and say the fact that we won two, it's easy to look back and say that it's not all about that. But towards the end of my career, I read John Wooden's book. Padraig Harrington came to us and spoke to us in 2000, and it was Christmas, so it would have been maybe December 28, 2008, before we won the Grand Slam. And he gave us a list of 5 books to read, right? One of them was The Power of the Subconscious Mind, which is absolute rubbish. The other one was Being Happy by Horowitz or something, wasn't it, Padraig? Dennis Whiteley was another one. But there was one of them, the 5 books. I went and bought all 5 of them. It was an incredible speech he gave to us.
Jesus.
But one of them was a book, a small little John Wooden book on I can't remember the principles of leadership. But this quote was in it about basically success is the peace of mind that comes from being the best you can be. And I remember reading it. It kind of sunk in with me. And then I remember meeting Enda McNulty, our sports psychologist, and he actually gave me a card with it written on it one day. And then I ended up buying another John Wooden book, I would say about 4 years before I retired. And when I read that for the 3rd time, I said, yeah, that's it. That makes perfect sense to me, because there can only ever be one winner at the end of the year. There can only ever be one team that lives the European Cup at the end of the year. But if you do absolutely everything in your power to be the best player you can be, and you do everything in your power then to make a few other guys around you to be the best they can be as well, there is amazing peace of mind and satisfaction in that. And that's why I finished the book with that, because that quote became the last 2-3 years of my career are the most satisfying of my career. And that's because I was kind of living by that mantra. It didn't matter what team we fielded. I was just going to try and be the best player I could be every time. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Well, that's a mantra for us all. Listen, it's fantastic to have you here. Wish you and the family, what's the French for Happy Christmas?
Joyeux Noël. Yeah. Look, I'm delighted to be here. I mean, I think what an amazing event to be at. You know, I'm involved in professional sports at the moment, and at times it's a little bit cutthroat. But to be at an event like this, where people, get to come together. There's a brilliant coach that coached me, a guy called Ian McGeechan. He coached the Lions when they won in 1997. And he gave this, they were the first fly on the wall documentary, first really good fly on the wall documentary. And he gave a brilliant speech. And it was the day before they went to play the final test. And he said, forevermore, he said, guys, when you meet each other on the street, whether we win or lose today, when we meet each other on the street, there will be a look between us and we'll know what we have achieved. And I think it's kind of similar to the room here. To be an All-Ireland scholar forevermore is an amazing achievement. And there'll always be a look between you. You'll always be able to help each other out. You'll always be able to pick up the phone to one another. And I think it's a really important network to have. So thanks very much to JP and everyone for inviting me here. And thanks very much for having me.
Oh, we're delighted to have you. Thank you. Paul O'Connell, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Paul. Please stay. Thank you very much. It's lovely. It's great. Thank you. So look at, happy Christmas to all of you. I wish you huge success. Those of you still doing exams, best of luck to you. And I hope we'll all see each other here again next year. God bless. Thank you and happy Christmas. Thank you, JP. And thanks to Diana.